Hi everyone, my name is Dr. Sarah Yu. I'm show host Dr. Sarah Yu Show, Today's America and the World, as well as a Dr. Sarah Show for Congress and for Senate Show. Today, I have a great contribution and great community supporter. Mr. Rennie is here. So welcome, Rennie. How are you?
Thank you very much. I'm doing well. Appreciate this opportunity to be with you today.
Great. So, my audience wants to know who you are and what is expert. I will have a few questions for you. Tell me about, just answer, okay? First question is, who are you? What is your passionate?
My wife and I, we live up here in Minnesota. We're the parents of twin boys who are now 24. They'll be 25 in October. But nearly 24 years ago, one of our boys, Nick, was vaccine injured by the MMR vaccine. And so we've had to learn to help him progress in life. And that got us started down a path of looking into why he was injured and why his twin brother was not. Since then, we've advocated for insurance coverage for disabled children. And now I've written a couple books on the vaccine injury compensation program here in the United States. Working on a third book currently about global compensation programs around the world from many different countries. So that's what I do. That's what I've written about. And it's trying to educate people, inform people about their rights if they have suffered from one of their loved ones in their family, a vaccine injury, whether it's the traditional vaccines and now what we see from the COVID injections or jabs, if you will.
Great. Tell me about those program you just talked about, vaccine, compensation programs. What is that?
The National Vaccine Injury Compensation Program, which was signed into law in 1986 by President Ronald Reagan, is a specific legal judicial process where people who have been injured, whether it's their child or their spouse or themselves, they can submit petitions to the federal government. It's actually, and the Secretary of HHS, which is Human Services, oversees the program. And you're seeking compensation for your injury, so you'd submit a petition along with your medical records. And the program would make decisions based on what your injury was, the outcomes, et cetera, and then award compensation or dismiss your claim. And that's where it started out being for children, for the 7 major vaccines at the time, which was diphtheria, tetanus, pertussis, which is whooping cough, measles, mumps, rubella, and then polio. But unfortunately, over time, this program has moved away from children and is now all about the adults. Adults getting injured from the flu shot and adults getting injured from the Tdap booster. And to the point now where 95% of all compensated cases are adults. So children are being thrown out. They're being shut out of this, and they're still being injured. So that's a very serious problem we have here in the United States.
As I know, there is a education program. You always contribution your time for advocate those vaccine injury, people. So tell me about education programs you are learning. Yeah.
Okay. Well, what I'm trying to do is through my books and my writings, educate people about the existence. You cannot sue the pharmaceutical manufacturer for damages. This is one of the only areas in the United States where you cannot sue the manufacturer or whoever produced the product or service. What we're also, I have write my writings through blogs and putting it out on social media, and also I'm teaching a class this fall. It's a 15-week class, 1 hour every Tuesday, and it's talking about this program. Plus, we're doing webinars through Zoom of people who have been injured regarding COVID or other vaccines, and I'll invite other attorneys to come on, and we're not providing legal advice, but we're just telling them what their options are, because most people do not know that these programs exist. And all we're trying to do is educate people to tell them, if you suspect an injury from a vaccine, and or in the COVID era here, if it's also from maybe a medical device or an antiviral drug used to treat COVID, you can file for compensation if you think you've been injured. So that's what we're trying to do, is educate people through classes, Zoom meetings, writings, the best we can.
As I know, you also filing petition, right? Tell me about that a little bit. Yeah.
Well, and in the beginning, my wife and I didn't know we had a vaccine injury until a few years later. And she contacted an attorney up in the Washington, D.C. area and inquired about it. And the attorney says, yes, you possibly have a case of vaccine injury. And we sent up a whole bunch of medical records. I mean, a lot. It was like 3 big boxes full. They reviewed all the medical records and said, we have a good case, except for one thing, and that is the statute of limitations. In this program, you only have 3 years from the regarding injury to file from the first time you see symptoms of the injury to when you can file. We missed it by 9 months. So we filed 3 years, 9 months, and 9 months being too late. So we were automatically rejected. We didn't even have a chance at all. So we looked at that and we just going, wow, this is incredible. So it's just, I had something in the back of my mind, and years later, I started thinking about that problem, and I started reaching out to other parents, and eventually I interviewed over 285 families who had filed petitions or either compensated or dismissed. And I started putting it together, and then here comes my first book, which was in 2014, which contains several of the interviews along with what this program's all about, the mystery behind it, because 99% of the people do not know this program exists. Yet the federal government is mandated by law to promote it, but they don't.
So thank you so much sharing that. Tell me about your 2 books, right?
Well, the first book, which was published in November of 2014, was called The Vaccine Court. And what I did is I talked about how the program, evolved from what happened in the 50s and 1960s and 1970s in the United States. And then the Congress and also the advocates at the time, Barbara Loe Fisher, Kathleen Williams, and Jim Schwartz, they led a large group and negotiated with Congress to create a program, the MVICP. So I talk about that, how we, came about, major shifts in the program in 1995, 1997, and then the additions of the shift away from childhood vaccine to when they added flu shots, they added Gardasil, they added several others, and brought it forth to 2014 when I published it. There's a lot of data in the book. Back in the beginning of the COVID era, back in March of 2020, my editor reached out and said, would you be interested in writing a revised book? I said, yes, I can do that. So what I did is I updated the data, added more stories, more things about what's happening currently, and put that together. And then in June of 2021, my second book, The Vaccine Court 2.0, was published. Then got that book out. People started really noticing it. There are a lot of talk shows and podcasts such as yourself and other people were very interested in it. I went out back to my editor this past spring and said, you know what, I'm going to go back. I want to look at compensation programs around the world, but I'm going to do it in a manner because some countries will not compensate for traditional vaccines, but they will compensate for COVID, such as Canada. Canada has a compensation program just for COVID vaccines, but not for traditional vaccines. So I said, okay, I'll start putting it together. And that's what I'm doing now, is writing and trying to complete the book. It's a big challenge because I've got to find people and interview people in those countries, whether it's in Germany, whether it's in China, whether it's in Japan or Singapore, South Africa, Australia, Mexico, all over the country, all over the world, I should say. So I'm trying to put that together, and hopefully I can get it done this winter and be published sometime late spring, early summer of next year.
Great. Tell me about what is top issue for vaccine program and solution. Yeah.
Well, in the MVICP, I think it's very obvious that it's no longer about children. They've shut the door on children, and it's because most of the injuries that they're coming in are flu shot, the result of flu shots. When you have 95 to 96% of compensated cases are for adults, we have to go back and look at why are children no longer being compensated? And there's a reason. There is some reasons why we no longer, you used to compensate for what we call SIDS, sudden infant death syndrome. Toddlers ages of 1 day to 12 months, with all the vaccines that they receive, they might die or pass away in the middle of the night, and we would compensate the parents or the family's estate for that on a readily basis. Yes, we would. But there was a policy shift somewhere around 2006, 2007 to say, no, we're not going to do this anymore. And the argument that's being made is that if we continue to compensate families, these parents will no longer vaccinate their kids. So it was a policy decision. Our government wants to continue vaccinating children as much as possible, yet denying compensation for those parents who's lost children. That was one policy decision. You have one of the vaccines is the DTaP, diphtheria, tetanus, and acellular pertussis. That one has been shown to have what we call, especially for young children, early onset of seizures, or what we call epilepsy. And we're no longer compensating for that. Our government once again is saying, no, we don't want to stop vaccinating. We want to keep vaccinating kids. Thus, we're not going to compensate them for when they develop early onset of seizures or epilepsy. So once again, it's a policy decision. There is also tried to reform the statute of limitations to expand it from 3 years, maybe to 5 to 6, maybe up to 8. Those efforts have never been successful. there is also efforts to compensate for what we call loss of consortium. And that is that husband and wife, the husband gets a flu vaccine and is now crippled for life, basically ambulatory, meaning has to live in a wheelchair, needs 24/7 care. Now the wife can in some states can sue for loss of consortium for other types of like a workplace injury, but for vaccines they can't. So there's been an effort to say the wife can now seek compensation for what we call loss of consortium. She no longer has her mate, her partner, not available. There's a lot of these efforts that need to be done to bring the program back to where it was in the beginning. But there's a lot of pushback. The pharmaceutical industry basically controls Congress, controls our government, and they're pushing back hard. So it's a difficult process. I'm just trying to bring a spotlight to all these issues, and hopefully we can have some people in Congress start doing the right thing and protecting. Instead of protecting a vaccine program, how about protecting those who have been injured, who are doing what they thought was the right thing? There is a statement out there. If we're going to have a vibrant vaccine program in the United States, we better have a vibrant compensation program to protect those and compensate those who have been injured. Otherwise, we're growing in masses where a lot of people are very skeptic of all vaccines. Now you're having a situation where a very divisive issue here in the United States. Those who believe in vaccines and those who do not believe in vaccines, when there could be a common ground and move forward, but there's not anymore.
Thank you so much for sharing that, all the issues and the solution. I think that is great view of that vaccine, we should solve that, and the Congress should have extended those jurisdictional, years. So as well as, support those injury patient as well as the lost family should cover them. So if I have chance, I will help you those issues change it, okay?
Thank you.
Any help I needed to do, just let me know. And this will be last question. I want to know about your 5 years goal and how we can collaboration as well as audience wants to help you, or audience, audience they wanted to contact you. Just let us know that. Yeah.
Okay. The book's website is thevaccinecourt.com. There is also a link to my email. You can contact me with direct questions. You can purchase the books out there, or you can go out to Amazon and type in the Vaccine Court and look for my books there. I do write occasionally, maybe once or about 2 or 3 times a month on a blog called thevaccinecourt.substack.com. And then, so we have that. The classes that I'm teaching are part of an online education program called ipac.edu. So it's ipak.edu. And then you can search for the Vaccine Court as one of the course offerings. There's a lot of courses out there on biology, microbiology, other types of science issues, and then a few courses on the law. And you'll find the one that's the Vaccine Court. Registration is still open for a couple more days for this fall semester. But I teach it. It's live on Tuesdays, and it's also recorded. So if you miss 1 or 2 or 3 or whatever, you can catch up, not only with the video recording with the entire class, but also all of the presentations and documents that are shared within the class. So it's just the ability for people to learn and to educate themselves and then share with others. And that's the goal there.
Great. Thank you so much for sharing that. Thank you for coming on my show. Do you have a last message?
Well, I just want to appreciate you for inviting me. So thank you. And then as I'm willing to talk to people, and whether one-on-one or groups, to help them understand what this is all about. So if anybody wants to have a small group and you want to have a group meeting, we can arrange for that to be done. I'll be more than happy to do so.
Oh, thank you so much. Say that, I can help with that too. Later on,
Good.
I have a meeting. I'll invite you to speak. Okay? Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Coming my show. Have a wonderful day. Okay.